I just want to welcome everybody to the Southern California chapter launch of the Jewish Democratic Council of America. I am David Bocarsley. I'm one of the 5 chapter co-chairs, and you will get a chance to meet all of us over the next hour, along with a number of very special guests who will share why the work we're doing here is so important. We are so excited to launch this chapter and have you all as part of it. It doesn't matter whether you are an expert to political work or completely new. This is a space to build community, to learn together, and to activate ourselves and our community to push for a more just region and country. So in the spirit of building community, I would love to ask all of you to introduce yourselves in the chat. We know most of you are in the Southern California region, but tell us specifically where you're from and what brought you here tonight. So as you're doing that, I will quickly model that myself and share that I live in the Palms, Culver City region in Los Angeles. And I spent my career working at the intersection of Judaism and politics and progressive activism. And I was so excited when JDCA was formed a few years ago, because I deeply believe that Jews need to show up in democratic spaces as Jews. And I remain incredibly impressed by JDCA's theory of change, targeting districts with Jewish communities that are large enough to make a difference in a given race. And in just 2 election cycles, JDCA has proven so incredibly effective and has grown immensely, and we'll learn more about that tonight. And I want to thank folks who are putting in the chat. Please continue to do so as we continue. So without further ado, we're going to start our program. We've got a number of special guests. We'll talk about what JDCA is. We will talk about how we're going to activate ourselves as we move forward. And then we'll think about next steps. And hopefully we'll end up getting together at some point in the near future in person. But in the meantime, I'm excited to hand it over to a powerful Jewish leader and dear mentor of mine. She actually brought me into JDCA. She is JDCA's board member and development chair, Ada Horwich.
Well, thank you, David. That was such a nice introduction. Since I'm the oldest one on the call, I'm actually always say I'm the oldest one on the board. I'm very honored to have been a founding member of JDCA, member of the board for, I don't know, maybe 3 to 4 years. JDC started with we didn't start with Charlottesville, but we decided right after Charlottesville that we had to become public. And so since then, we've been working very hard. JDCA is a natural home for me because I love political advocacy and political activism, and the two marry each other here. And of course, I want to ensure that Democrats are elected and re-elected to Congress, to the House, to the Senate, and even to state positions. So this is really a natural home for me, and I think that everybody on the call will find the same thing as you get involved in JDCA. Jewish Democratic work. So I know that the Democratic Party embraces Jewish values and mores, and my Jewish upbringing is reflected in the Democratic Party. And I think that's why I'm here, and that's why I put in so much effort. To me, it speaks to my Jewish values, to what I feel the Torah has taught us as a community. And talking about the Torah and community, I have the delightful pleasure to introduce my Rebbe. My Rebbe is Sharon Brous from ICAR. She's a founder of ICAR, which I bet most of you have heard of, but it is synagogue and also a spiritual community for all of us in Los Angeles. If you haven't heard Sharon before, you will be thrilled tonight to hear her and very impressed. If you want to know more about ICAR, I'm going to put a plug in for it because I'd like you to go to the website and even go to Shabbat service, which is on Facebook, I believe. Her last sermon this Saturday was quite a winner. So maybe she'll say some of the same words tonight. Sharon Brous is one of the country's most influential and innovative rabbis that we know. She has a BA and a master's degree from Columbia University and was ordained by the Jewish Theological Seminary. To listen to Rabbi Brose is to be reminded of our Jewish values and the lessons of Jewish activism. She is quoted as saying, "There is no decoupling of religion and politics." And I couldn't agree more. Thank you, Rabbi. We welcome you. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Ada, thank you so much. Thank you for that beautiful introduction. And thank you, David. Ada, you can't see what's happening in the chat, but your whole fan club has formed an executive committee here that we've got a president and a vice president. And so others who might want to jump in there as well. I'm really grateful to be with all of you. It's making my heart feel better just to be in this space with all of you tonight. And I know we're going to be joined by Senator Padilla, which is wonderful. And Haley, thank you for everything that you do to this whole group. And I know you're going to meet the whole team in just a few moments. Bobby, I thank you. I was thinking earlier today about a talk that I gave in late November 2016. I was invited to address a large mainstream national Jewish organization to try to sketch out some of the contours of where we were and where I thought that we were heading as a Jewish community and also as a country. And I tried to articulate to this group at that moment what I believed to be at stake in our time. And I shared that night a story that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. offered in his commencement address at Oberlin, I think it was in 1965, when he told the story of Rip Van Winkle. And it's an incredible story that many of us heard when we were growing up. And what Dr. King points out in that story is that the thing that we usually remember about the story is that Rip Van Winkle slept for 20 years. But he says that there's another point in the story that's almost always completely overlooked, which is that there was a little sign on the inn in the little town on the Hudson in which Rip went in when he went up on top of the mountain for his long sleep. So when he went up, the sign had a picture of King George III of England. But when he came down 20 years later, when he woke up, the sign had a picture of George Washington, the first president of the United States. And Dr. King said that fact, that reveals that the most striking thing about the story of Rip Van Winkle is not the fact that he slept for 20 years, but it is the fact that he slept through a revolution. While he was up peacefully, blissfully unaware on that mountain, a great revolution was happening in the world. And it was a revolution that Dr. King said would change the course of history. And Rip Van Winkle knew absolutely nothing about it because he was asleep. Dr. King then said that there are all too many people who, in a time of great social change, fail to achieve the new mental outlooks that the new situation demands. And he says there is nothing more tragic than to sleep through the revolution. So I shared that story that night with this group to some of their dismay and consternation. I don't think I'll ever be invited back to speak with them. I told them that something very dramatic was unfolding in our country as we spoke, that we were seeing a revolution that was fueled by the values that were antithetical to the values that Dr. King was fighting for, values of inclusion and equality and justice for all. And also what we were seeing in our country was antithetical to our Jewish values, to our long established commitment to justice and righteousness, to dignity and to mercy. Instead, I said there was a revolution that was beginning in America, a revolution that we, in fact, ended up, all of us, living through over the past many years, that was fueled by white supremacy, by misogyny, by incivility, and by an absolute disdain for the truth. And I told that group that night that the winds of change were blowing, this time toward repression and toward regression, and that our Jewish community needed to decide on which side of history we wanted to stand. Would we stay awake or would we sleep through the revolution? And over the course of the following 4 years, our Jewish community decided to show up in absolutely extraordinary ways. We showed up again and again in solidarity with our allies and with our neighbors as attacks on their dignity and ours coursed through the body politic. We took to the streets, we organized, we protested, we raised money, and we voted, and we made a difference. And for many of us, that was a feverish work that took us day and night through the last 4.5 years. This spirit is what paved the work that all of you and us are doing together here. And I believe that this spirit has to be our blueprint moving forward. So it's my prayer tonight at the launch of this new chapter that we continue to muster a true sense of moral purpose as we face the very real challenges of our time. These are different challenges than the ones that we faced in the last chapter, but they are challenges nevertheless. As we affirm that as American Jews, we are an integral part of the soul of this country, that we share responsibility for the moral DNA of America. Over the generations, our people have walked through history with, we've been sustained by a kind of audacity that transcends social and political limitations and calculations, that calls us again and again to do better, to fight harder, to manifest our core values wherever we are, whatever the circumstances. And we do this even when it's challenging and painful, perhaps especially in those moments. So I want to say to you tonight that we're tired now. I am tired, but I hope that we won't sleep through this new chapter of the revolution. I hope that we'll live into our spiritual inheritance, that we'll recognize that we're called perpetually, la'asok tzedakah mishpat, to be pursuers of justice and righteousness, fighters, defenders, bearers of holy chutzpah here in Los Angeles, in California, and across the United States. And yes, in Israel and in Palestine too. And I know that we're talking together tonight in the midst of a very challenging and personally painful time. And I know that this is not a distant theoretical conflict for us. Many of us are truly proximate to the fighting that's happening there now. I've shared with many of you that my beloved brother and his 4 beautiful children have spent most of the last 10 days in their bomb shelter in Ra'anana. And my heart aches, and I know that yours does too, to witness the absolute devastation that is being wrought by violent conflagration throughout Israel and in Gaza, and now in the West Bank too. Entire cities living in fear, entire families destroyed with single airstrikes, violence between neighbors in mixed towns, a right-wing Israeli government that spent many years cozying up to our own right-wing administration, now fanning the flames of fear and hatred and division with no end in sight. I pray tonight that the very values that drove us these past several years will continue to drive us to live in this time with courage and with conviction, to stand for what is just and what's right, to show our devotion to Israel by fighting for Israel to realize its own greatest aspirations, as articulated in the Declaration of the Establishment of the State, a nation based on freedom and justice and peace, as envisaged by the prophets of Israel, a state ensuring complete equality of social and political rights to all of its inhabitants. I pray that we will double down on working with our allies and our friends and our neighbors to strengthen the relationships here in the United States, especially in the face of a rise in anti-Semitism, even in our own city, even last night. To stand for and with one another, to dismantle racist systems and affirm in word and deed the heart of our Jewish faith, especially in times of great social upheaval. We are called to lift up the downtrodden, to fight for those who are most vulnerable, to build a society that reflects and honors the image of God in every single person. I want to say that we've just begun at Ikar meeting as a community in person 2 weeks ago. We've now just reopened. And every week for the next 2 months, we are filling our space with people for whom it is their first time coming back together in person. So every week we're starting our services with the words of Shechianu, thanking God for allowing us to live in times like these. As painful as the world is, We know how beautiful the world can be, and especially everything after everything we've all just been through, we affirm that it is absolutely nothing short of a miracle that we are here to live even through these challenging times. So I want to close by asking you to join me in saying the words of Shehechianu. Let us offer this blessing of gratitude together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, shehechianu v'kimanu v'gianu lazman hazeh. And together let us say, Amen.
And thank you so much, Rabbi Brous. I'm so grateful to have you as my rabbi, and I think we are all just so grateful to have any opportunity to learn with you and from you. So thank you for being here and for your words of Torah. As I mentioned at the beginning, we have a number of other special guests that are joining us today. And I'd like to take a couple of minutes to be able to introduce and give them the chance to say hello, a number of elected officials, Jewish elected officials from the LA area that we are just blessed to have as supporters of JDCA and as allies in the work that we're doing. So I'm going to see if we can spotlight a number of them at the same time, but I'd first like to, I'm so grateful. I have a number of I work for the California Legislative Jewish Caucus, and I have a number of my bosses that are here today. So I'm going to introduce a couple of them first, and then we'll pass it on and hear from some of the local electeds. So first, I would like to introduce Senator Bob Hertzberg, who is also a dear Senate Majority Leader, to say hello.
Hey, thanks, everybody. I'm sorry, I'm just standing outside my office. I'm in the middle of a negotiating police reform, and as Mr. Blumenfeld knows from being here, and Paul Koretz knows from those days of being here dealing with SB2, if you know what that is. So it's part of the mission of what we're engaged in, But I just want to enthusiasm. And Barry, who's on the call, there she is with the kids. Barry, who's been working with me since day one, and Ada, I saw Ada on there, and Kathy Unger and Greg and Walensky always. But I just wanted to just welcome everybody. Thanks for doing this. This is the core and soul of how we as a community come together and fight for our values, the challenges we're facing in Israel, the challenges we're facing with racial identity and issues that we are so much a part of and have been a part of history. All I want to do is thank you. I've spent my entire life, I started, as so many of you know, long before I was speaker in the African-American community in the East Side. And my whole approach is always, just like we do here, is building bridges among communities. And I am just over the moon about how successful the Jewish caucus is, and how Lance Bocarsley's boy is working. David is, I still call him Lance Bocarsley, because I knew his dad. I would work with us. That's how old I am. But thanks, everybody. And David, thanks for putting this together, and everybody for being here. Hallelujah. I got to go back and keep negotiating. We're going to make this deal. Bye.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you so much. And now I'll quickly turn it over to Assemblymember Laura Friedman.
Hi, everybody. It's really wonderful to be here. I want to thank David and Ada for inviting me and for helping to put all of this together. There is so much strength in community, and there's so many challenging issues right now for our whole community. And I've been proud to be able to be an assembly member who represents a Jewish community and mostly a Jewish perspective. I work on legislation that tries to fulfill our goal of Tikkun Olam with the Jewish caucus and working with the other ethnic caucuses. And I really I'm happy that we have this gathering of like-minded progressive Democrats here tonight. So thanks so much. And it's wonderful to be here.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember. And now I'll turn it over to Senator Ben Allen, my former boss and the past chair of the Jewish caucus.
Well, so good to see everybody. Just wanted to join my voice in the chorus of support for this great initiative. When Ada Horowitz and Rabbi Brous and David Bocarsley asked me to jump and get involved with something, how can I possibly say no? It's great to see so many friends, and it's great to see us all come together in solidarity with both our democratic values, our progressive values, and our Jewish values. We've got a fantastic Jewish caucus, wonderful dynamic members, and David, of course, has served our caucus so ably over the past few years, and it was just such an honor to serve as chair of that caucus, where we were basically able to both stand up for our community, get funding for everything from security grants for synagogues and summer camps and other community centers that were potential targets of violence or threats, right the way over to a Tikkun Olam bill package that married our Jewish values and our broader Tikkun Olam values that have to do with standing up for the downtrodden And so our caucus is powerful. It's important. We're influential. We're in the midst. And I want to say how much I know that I know I can speak on behalf of my colleagues when I say that we really want to partner with you and work closely with you as you do your work advancing the causes that have already been discussed. So let's work moving forward. Our causes and our needs and our concerns are the same, and we want to be partners with you.
Thanks so much, Senator Allen. And now we'll have Senator Stern.
Thanks, David. What an illustrious group. This is just a congregation of some most impressive leaders, not just in Southern California, but in the whole country, I would say. We have an embarrassment of riches when it comes to spiritual and political leadership. And in addition to thanking Ada and Howard and Kathy and all the electeds and David and Jeremy, Haley, I gotta say, you've been so brave over the last few weeks here, and your voice, and not letting this Republican narrative that somehow their party is the party of Israel, their party's the one that's supportive of Jewish people or standing up to anti-Semitism, rejecting this sort of binary choice. I found it incredibly powerful, and Lord knows we need it in LA, as evidence on the streets of West Hollywood last night, more than ever. So we're doing the hard work here. That's what this group's up for. It's not posture, it's sweat, and that's what Jewish community is truly about. So thanks for letting me be a part of this.
Thank you so much, Senator Stern. And now I'd like to introduce Assemblymember Richard Bloom.
Thanks, David, and thanks for inviting me and allowing me to participate tonight. This is an extremely important organization because there's never been a more important time for us to be organized and unified as progressive Democrats. And I'm very proud to represent an assembly district that is heavily identified with the Jewish community. I mean, after all, I represent both Cantor's and Nate Nowell's delis. If that weren't enough, I'm also a co-founder of the Jewish Caucus, the author of AB 2844, the only bill in the country right now that I'm aware of that actually is successfully combating BDS. I currently have legislation to create a commission on the state of hate, which is just exploding in this country. And where there's hate, unfortunately, we're always targets. So very important legislation. Thank you again. It's great to be here, and I look forward to participating in the future.
Thank you so much, Assemblymember. And now I will pass it over to my co-chair, Jeremy Overstein, to introduce some of our local electeds.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm honored to be a co-chair with such an illustrious group, exemplified by the sheer number of you on here tonight. We know that showing up is key. It's a key ingredient of our advocacy and of our voice. And there are a few better examples of that than the people who help us run the state, some of whom you just heard from, and help run the city as well. So joining us here tonight, we have our city controller, our city attorney, 2 council members, and a school board member as well. And we will start to hear from my boss, Mr. Ron Galperin.
Good evening, everybody. And thank you, Jeremy, for the introduction. And thank you to the best chief of staff anywhere, Jeremy, for everything that you do for our city of Los Angeles. And thank you also to Ada, a real hero of mine, for all the work that you've done all these years, and David, and so many other people who are on this call. This has been a really challenging week in so many ways. Let's be honest about it. And we hope and we pray and we work for a peaceful and just and lasting solution to so much of what's happening in Israel and in the Middle East. And also, we've seen what happened locally, another manifestation of hate on the streets of Los Angeles, which we cannot countenance. But that's what makes this organization and this coming together more important than ever. And for me, it means a lot personally, because it's the coming together of my 2 identities, my Jewish identity, my democratic identity, of caring about equality and of equity and justice and worker rights and inclusivity and education, all the things that Judaism and my Jewish tradition stands for, and that our party, our Democratic Party, stands for. So thank you for all the work that you're doing. And I'm so excited for all the work that is going to be done, and great to be joining you all tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Controller Galperin. City Attorney Mike Fear, thank you for being here, sir. You're on.
Thank you. I think, am I unmuted?
You just unmute yourself and then we'll be good. Can't hear you right now.
Shape.
There you go.
Okay, good. Hi, it is great to be with everybody. And I wanted to say, we're here inaugurating a new terrific collaboration. I want to tell a brief story. When I was first elected to office as a city council member, I had, as many of you know, completed 8 years running Bethesda Legal Services. And I had been very busy at night, but not as busy as it was to be a city council member, and Thanksgiving came. My son was 4 at that point, my daughter was 2, and my son was pretty uptight about the fact that I was going to be delivering meals through Jewish Family Service on Thanksgiving and not be home that morning. So I said to Aaron, why don't you come with me? And he went into the living room and he took his Barney bank, you know, that purple dinosaur every adult hates, and dumped all the pennies on the floor and asked me for plastic bags. And he started to put equal numbers of pennies in the bags. And I said, what are you doing? He said, we're going to deliver meals tomorrow. What will they do the next day? And I have to say, I hope that as this organization gets its footing and decides what its priorities are, that we define ourselves as Jews, as progressive Democrats, by what we will do, not just today, not just on Twitter, not just in a press conference. What are we going to do the next day? If we can orient ourselves toward that future in our city, in a moment when we are facing so many crises converging at once, then we will have done a real mitzvah. So thank you, everybody, for organizing today. I look forward to deeply collaborating with you in the next chapter of what will be. Congratulations and good luck.
Well said. Thanks so much for being here, Mike. And now the council member from the 3rd District out in the San Fernando Valley, my neck of the woods, Bob Blumenfield.
All right, Jeremy, thank you so much. It's great to see you, David, Ada. I see so many friends as I scan through. It's so many people I know and respect, and so many others I hope to get to know. So this is just a wonderful launch, and I'm proud to be a part of it. I saw the members of the Assembly Jewish Caucus, or the Senate and Assembly, and I'm a founder of that when I was in the Assembly. So it's nice to see that that is blossoming. And now there's only, in the council, there's a caucus of 2, myself and Mr. Koretz. But it's inspiring to see all of you, because we need to do more to get to that intersection of our Jewish values and our big D democratic values. How we bring those 2 together, it can be very powerful, socially progressive, pro-Israel, Jewish community values. That's what this is about. That's what you all are here empowering and inspiring. So thank you for that. And I look forward to the collaboration and moving on to the future to make this organization a great success.
Thank you, Councilman. Councilmember Paul Koretz, excuse me, the other PK, represents the 5th District of Los Angeles. Paul Koretz, thanks for being here tonight.
Well, thank you, Jeremy, and to David and Ada and everyone else involved for inviting me to join you here this evening. It's my honor and pleasure to congratulate everyone on the chapter launch of the Jewish Democratic Council of America. This is unfortunately an auspicious time to be launching this chapter. As you know, we've had a string of anti-Semitic attacks in our city, and I've spent the last 24 hours with law enforcement and community members focused on these hate crimes, which unfortunately all took place in my district in Los Angeles. We're not going to allow this violence to go unchecked, and we're definitely not allowing the conflict in the Middle East to spill out onto the streets of Los Angeles. As Democrats, we celebrate our difference while we honor heritage. We have an expectation of racial and religious and economic equality and justice in our democratic system. And we absolutely believe that everyone's entitled to their opinion, but not through violence. The Jewish values of Tikkun Olam, as many have mentioned, are central to our values for humanity. and are seen through our advocacy. And this is the absolute right time for us to launch this chapter. And I'm so proud of everyone involved in implementing it. And I'm thrilled to support you and your work in any way possible. So congratulations on this launch, and just let me know what I can do to help in the future.
Sure will. Thank you, Councilman. Thank you for being here. School board member Nick Melvoin is here with us as well. Thank you for being here, friend. Please say a few words.
Thanks for having me. And I have to say, for those who say the age of miracles is over, you just got a minion of Jewish elected officials to speak for less than a minute each. I mean, even Hertzberg, who was like maybe a minute-ish. So, you know, as Talmud teaches us, or as was the tagline for Batman Returns, or both, it's always darkest before the dawn. And the last year, there's been darkness, whether it's the ethnic studies fight we've taken on as a community, or what happened January 6th, which some in our country won't even acknowledge was problematic, or the event of the last 10 days. But this group, this minion and beyond really does give me hope that when our community comes together, we can take on these challenges. And I think for folks who have had an exhausting week or two, as we have, and the events of last night were in my district as well, our people have a 5,000-year history with this. And, you know, as Mark Twain said, everything is mortal but the Jew. And here we are, and we're coming back together. And I'll leave us with, you know, I heard someone recently say that as these new chapters come and there's new leadership, they're passing the torch. And I would just encourage us, and especially those, the Adas of the world, and I'll petition to join the board of your fan club, Ada, but I'll say that we can't pass the torch. We need to use our torches to light other torches, because only when we all have our flame will we be able to continue to march forward as a community. So thank you for launching this new chapter. And I hope those of you who are doing it don't just light this torch, but keep yours and light others, so that we can work collectively on our common goals. So, you know, Kahini Aratzon, may that be God's will. And thank you so much for including me this evening.
Thanks so much for being here, Nick. And as you can see, we are stronger together, and this is just the start. So thrilled that we had so many people who lead us in the council, in the state, in the school board, and beyond. And this is just the start of what we can do. And you'll hear some more of that later tonight. And right now, I'm going to pass it off to my fellow co-host, Nancy Gurney, with our next guest.
I am unmuted. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jeremy. I want to thank everybody for being here tonight. I just want to tell you, Rabbi Brous, I have to say, I also feel so much better tonight being here with this group of people, with this community. It is a really difficult time, and I know that everyone I know who worked very hard in the past election, we are still exhausted. Everyone is still tired from what happened, but there's really just no time to rest. Obviously, what's happening is we are coming up to another election. It'll be here before we know it. And what I really wanted to say was that what I love so much about JDCA, and what I'm so grateful about JDCA for, and the reason I'm a member and that I support it, is not only because Ada asked me to, which she did in the very beginning, another person of Ada's fan club, but really because JDCA is so focused. JDCA is strategic, and there's no waste of energy. When you work with JDCA, they go into the battleground states, they select races that they believe that they can harness the Jewish vote. They select candidates who support our Jewish values. And then these candidates become members of the House, senators, and even a president. And that is so important to me, is that it's so focused and effective. And JDCA, I know because they've done the research, was instrumental in the last election and instrumental in the Georgia election, which if we hadn't won Georgia, we would not have the majority in the Senate. So I really just can't thank JDCA enough. And I am honored to be a part of this group. And I just want to invite everybody. It's really an opportunity to work with this group. So I hope that you will join us because it's all about organization and then activation, actually doing things. And I want to also just say to everybody, Not everyone likes to phone bank. Phone banking is a big part of what's effective. But if it's not your thing to phone bank, you probably know people who will phone bank, or they know people who will phone bank. And there are other ways to get involved too. So when we come upon that time, don't be shy if that's not something that's something that appeals to you. And that's pretty much it. Our political power is mighty when we all get together, and I hope that you will join us to do that. But now, my biggest pleasure tonight is I get to introduce our fearless leader, our CEO, Haley Soifer. Senator Stern remarked about Haley and her level head. I am so impressed with Haley. I've seen her in some interviews that are difficult. She is so just measured is the only way I can say it. She is so effective, so intelligent, and she has grown this organization in such an impressive way in the short amount of time that we have been here. And I am just constantly impressed by you, Haley. So thank you so much for everything that you do. I just want to let everybody know Haley not only is a wonderful leader, but she also has all the creds to go behind it. She's National Security Advisor for 4 members in the Congress. She was also the National Security Advisor for our now Vice President, our former Senator Kamala Harris in California. She worked with Samantha Power. She held many, many positions. She has the gravitas and strength to be our leader. So let me turn it over to you, Haley. Thank you so much for everything.
Thank you, Nancy, and thanks to all of you for being here today. I want to thank Ada, who spoke at the outset. Today might be the official kickoff of our Southern California chapter, but for those of you who have either been to Ada's home to meet with us on behalf of JDCA, even before I joined the organization in 2018, or joined Ada in phone banking at the West Side HQ, and I believe we have Eve on the line here. The Levinsons were amazing in supporting that effort. We had a whole JDCA table every week, phone banking in the 2018 midterms. You know that the spirit of this chapter has been around for some time, and it's so wonderful to see it come together. I want to give everyone a sense of who JDCA is, what we've done, and where we are going from here. And those of you who know me know that I come with maps, and you know, as Nancy said, it is about the data. We are a data-driven organization. That's how you win elections. So I'm going to go through briefly with you what we're all about. So JDCA, as Ada mentioned, was founded right after neo-Nazis marched in Charlottesville, and we have emerged since then as the voice of Jewish Democrats nationally, and we are a movement, and we are thrilled to have you all be a part of it. In 2020, we organized around the country in critical swing states, 14 of them specifically. We targeted about almost 2 million voters. We created 15 state chapters, and we're so thrilled to add this one to our list. We had not only this grassroots movement of voters throughout the country, but it included, importantly, student leaders, and we're going to hear from one of them in a bit. We created ads, over 500 of them, for 73 candidates. Joe Biden was one of them, but there were 72 others, House and Senate candidates, and we reached about 650,000 voters, which is how you win elections. Now, the Jewish vote matters. We know that, and JDCA leverages that in 2 ways. It's about Jewish support for Democrats, and it's about turnout. So as it relates to support for Democrats, in this election, actually, we had the largest margin, and don't let anyone tell you differently, the largest margin that we've seen between a Democratic and Republican candidate for president in 20 years. 77% of the Jewish vote nationally supported Joe Biden, and that played a critical difference in ensuring that he won this election. And why was that? Well, it was not just the fact that about 3/4 of our community identify as Democrats, but it was also the fact, and this shows you compared to the last election, this number increased. But also it was really a moment where we were in terms of the loss of security in our community. And I know that you have felt that acutely, especially in the past day in Los Angeles, the rise of anti-Semitism, with most of our community believing that we are less secure today than we were 5 years ago before Donald Trump. And, you know, there are a lot of false narratives out there about the Jewish vote, especially in the past week. And, you know, the reality about the Jewish vote is as follows. We are overwhelmingly Democrats because we share democratic values on a wide range of domestic policy issues. And those issues also include US support for Israel, but we know that we're voting on a wide range of issues. So anyone who tells you that Jews are not supporting Democrats or or Democrats are not supporting Israel, they're patently wrong. And we exist as an organization, not just to ensure that that Jews continue to support Democrats, but also that the Democratic Party continues to align with the values of the Jewish community. Now, the 2020 election, just to go back to it a bit and demonstrate how the Jewish vote made a difference, really came down to these 5 states that flipped from red to blue from 2016 to 2020: Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Arizona, and Georgia. And the Jewish vote made a difference in all of these states. This map or this graph shows you those 5 states, and the red bar graph shows you the margin by which Donald Trump won. The royal blue is the margin by which Joe Biden won, and that navy blue is the universe of voters that JDCA contacted. Now, we did everything we could to mobilize the Jewish vote in our 14 states around the country, but without the Jewish vote in 3 of these 5 states, Donald Trump could still be president today. The margin by which Donald Trump won, of course, popular vote is one thing, and thank you so much, California, for ensuring that it was over 7 million votes. But of course, you know, that's not the way the election is decided. And when it comes to the Electoral College, this election was actually decided by just over 40,000 votes. The Jewish vote made a difference. As we know, as you can see here, in states like Georgia, Arizona, it was right around 10,000 votes. The Jewish vote made a difference. But also turnout. Jews do turn out at a slightly higher rate, and we did a remarkable job in this quite difficult election, right? We didn't leave our homes, but JDCA targeted everyone where they were on their devices. We voted by mail. We got out the vote. We showed up. Of Jewish Dems, 84% voted. And of independents, who we also targeted, 69% voted. It's remarkable, and it's higher than the American average, which was also higher in 2020. It was 66%. We did it again in Georgia with everyone's help. We targeted 86,000 Jewish voters in Georgia to not only, as we had seen, flip the House in 2018, flip the White House in November of 2020, but we knew our job wasn't done. We wanted to flip the Senate. And we sent mailers to every Jewish Democrat and independent in Georgia with a message of unity between Raphael Warnock and Jon Ossoff, combating so many of those false narratives that were out there trying to divide our community, especially surrounding issues related to Israel. And that was something we saw throughout the Trump era. And unfortunately, it does continue the effort to use Israel as a political wedge issue, which JDCA strongly opposes. We made ads, we had Jon Ossoff and Warnock, and we are so thrilled to see them win on January 5th. And then we knew the next day, January 6th, our work was not done. And our work would continue, and then it changed fundamentally on that horrific day that we saw the siege on the Capitol. And it wasn't just the fact that white supremacists and anti-Semites and domestic terrorists and extremists had the siege on the Capitol. It was also the fact that they were incited by the US president with the help of members of Congress, Republican members of Congress. And this was an attack on our democracy, trying to stop the peaceful transfer of power. And we knew in that moment our work would continue, even if Donald Trump had lost. And thank goodness that we now have a president who shares our values, that extremism was there to stay in Washington, and we as JDCA would be combating it. So our first effort in the 2021, and it's already started with 2022 cycle, is an effort to combat that domestic extremism and now voter suppression. And there is a direct continuum between the kind of anti-Semitism and extremism we saw and attacks on our democracy that have resulted in voter suppression. I'm going to share this with you. It's a 30-second ad, so it'll be quick. But our message to combat this threat that we now see to our democracy and to the next election.
There is a link tying white supremacy and anti-Semitism to threats against American democracy. It started with the big lie about the election, continued with the deadly insurrection on January 6th. Now it's an existential threat. Nearly every state is working to limit Americans' right to vote. The threat to our democracy did not end on January 20th. It's just begun. Join us in the fight for voting rights, democracy, and an end to extremism and hate.
So you can see the kind of message that we have been sending. And this is really a focus of our efforts this year. We're combating voter suppression and extremism. We've launched another digital ad program with messages similar to what I've just showed. We are serving as a resource for members of Congress and the administration, including on critical issues like Israel. We are creating voter registration efforts, especially targeting younger voters. When we look at what went well in 2020, Georgia leading by example, and versus where we didn't have great outcomes in this election, we know the critical difference is turnout and the electorate, and we are working to expand that electorate in the same way that we saw was successful in Georgia. We are empowering all of you to take action. You'll hear more later about our first Hill Days, where our chapters will all descend virtually on Capitol Hill next month. And we are hosting Democratic candidates and events. Of course, I would be remiss if I didn't mention what has happened in Israel in the past 10 days. We, JDCA, are not an Israel organization. We do partner with many of the pro-Israel organizations that are out there, ranging from AIPAC to J Street to all of the organizations that are advocating for a strong U.S.-Israel relationship. We're not an Israel organization. We are an organization representing the values of Jewish Democrats. And we know one of those values is support for the U.S.-Israel relationship. At this time of crisis, we are certainly supporting Israel's right to self-defense, but our message is also that it's clear that one can be supportive of Israel and its right to self-defense as it's under attack, while also supporting Palestinian rights and the right to safety, and not conflating the Palestinian people with the terrorist organization that is Hamas. And we are finding more and more Democrats, very strong pro-Israel Democrats, including our president, share that view and are voicing concern about Palestinian rights and safety. And that is an important point to make, and a shift that we have seen in the past. I don't know if it's just the past week, but certainly come to light in the past week. Israel, of course, is not the only issue. This shows you the range of issues that JDCA is taking action on, everything from gun safety to jobs, to racial justice, to voting rights, to stopping a nuclear armed Iran, to climate change, and the list goes on. Everything is with an eye to the next election. And as you can see, the logos here show you states where JDCA has chapters, and we are so proud to add the logo here in Southern California. And the states that are outlined in yellow are those that are going to have competitive Senate races. Now, believe me, there are going to be very competitive House races as well. I just can't tell you exactly what it'll look like until we have final redistricting done. But we are preparing already for the next Senate election. And the majority, our majority, is quite slim. As we know, it's essentially non-existent in the Senate. Thank goodness for my former boss and Juan Rodriguez's former boss, our now vice president, who can break the tie, but it is a non-existent majority at 50-50. In the House, it's even closer than most people realize. On election night, Democrats had 222 seats versus the Republicans 213. Now we're down to 218 versus 212. It's a majority of 6 seats in the House. It is a very, very narrow majority, and it's something we're going to fight to not only retain, but expand in 2022. So with that, we are looking at California. You have many competitive House seats. And as you know, we've gotten involved in 2018 and 2020 in many of those House races. And for anyone who tells you that the Jewish vote is going Republican in California, you can look no further than here. The reality is that over half of California's Jewish voters are Democrats, and the second largest contingent are independents. About 30% are independents, and the majority of them lean toward Democrat. But we're going to continue to fight for every vote, and we're going to continue to mobilize Jewish voters with your help. So thank you all for being a part of this movement. Thank you all for being a part of this chapter. We are thrilled to continue to grow with you, and we have a lot more work to do. So we look forward to doing it with all of you in advance of the next election. And with that, I am turning it over to whomever Bobby says is going next. Is that Kate? Kate. Okay, I'm proud to turn it over to Kate Chavez. Kate was one of our JDCA campus fellows. We had 35 campus fellows, of course, in the last election. Of course, when we envisioned the program, they were all supposed to be on their campuses. They weren't, but we were all virtual, and therefore they could do the work nationally. And now Kate is a member of our Next Gen Leadership Council, and we're thrilled to have her as a part of our organization. Thank you, Kate.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Haley, for that informative presentation. Hi, everyone. My name is Kate Chavez, and as an Ashkenazi and Latino organizer, I'm so proud to be part of JDCA, an organization that is committed to advocating for Jewish and democratic values. My JDCA story really starts back in August 2020 when, as Haley mentioned, I began as an organizing fellow during the 2020 general election and then continued phone banking through the Georgia runoff election as well. And I saw firsthand the impact that JDCA made across the nation. As someone who works to combat anti-Semitism every single day as the National Associate Director of High School Affairs for Stand With Us and as the Engagement Director for the California Young Democrats Jewish Caucus, I really could not be more proud to be here with all of you tonight as we commit ourselves to JDCA's mission here in Southern California. I also now have the incredible honor of introducing United States Senator Alex Padilla, and I really want to recognize the truly historic nature of Senator Padilla's position, being California's first Latino senator. Senator Alex Padilla is the proud son of immigrants from Mexico. Padilla attended Los Angeles public schools and is a graduate of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where he earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in mechanical engineering. After graduating from MIT, Padilla was elected to the Los Angeles City Council, where he served during pressing times in Los Angeles and provided citywide leadership really in critical times. He was elected to the state Senate in 2006 and represented more than 1.1 million people in the San Fernando Valley. Padilla served as California's first Latino Secretary of State starting in January 2015 and was re-elected in 2018, receiving the most votes of any Latino elected official across the United States. With all of that being said, I would like to formally introduce you all to United States Senator Alex Padilla.
Hi, I'm Senator Alex Padilla. Thank you for inviting me to join you to celebrate the launch of the Southern California chapter of the Jewish Democratic Council of America. It's my honor to serve as your representative in the United States Senate. Now, my priorities in the Senate are guided by my family's story and the value my parents instilled in my sister, my brother, and me. Like so many others, my parents arrived in the United States in search of a better life. For decades, my mom cleaned houses, and my dad worked as a short-order cook in restaurants throughout Los Angeles. Hard, honest work to put food on our table and to provide for me and my siblings. I carry my parents' story close to my heart as we fight for immigration reform that respects and protects those who have come to America and contributed so much to our communities. I remember the neighborhood in the San Fernando Valley where I grew up when I fight for environmental justice and voting rights. And I'm honored to partner with the Jewish community to help build a world that better reflects our shared values. Fairness, inclusion, and pursuit of justice are not only democratic values, but are also Jewish values that are exemplified in our work towards a more equitable future. From the foundation of the NAACP and the March on Selma, to the United Farm Workers picket lines, Jewish allies have stood alongside Black and Brown Americans to pursue greater justice for all. Thank you for carrying that work forward in forming this new chapter of the JDCA. In the last year, the work of the JDCA activists and a broad coalition of groups like yours helped to ensure voters registered and turned out for the most consequential election of our generation. And we've already seen the immediate results of a Biden-Harris administration and a Democratic Congress committed to pursuing justice. We passed the American Recovery Plan to deliver critical aid for coronavirus recovery. We've delivered vaccines to more than half of adults and will continue to legislate for a sustainable economic recovery. But there's much work yet to be done. From the existential threat of climate change to barriers to the ballot box, our state and our nation need to pursue bold action. Now more than ever, our communities must work together to uphold our democratic ideals. Together, we can and will build a just and equitable future for all. Thank you again for inviting me to join you in today's program, and please continue to stay safe.
Thanks, Kate. And we want to thank the senator for sending in that video. I know that he wanted to be with us tonight, but he had a scheduling conflict. But he is, I know, a very strong supporter of JDCA. He is a Southern California native and a fellow resident of the San Fernando Valley. So he is with us in spirit. I just, before we introduce our next guest, Juan Rodriguez, I just want to talk about my JDCA story a little bit. And it really comes way before my time, around the time of Abraham Joshua Heschel. He is someone who I look to as a hero and someone who helped set the tone for a lot of what we do still here in our progressive circles and in our circles where we want to make the world a better place. That idea of Tikkun Olam, I think, comes a lot from the work that he did in the South in the 1960s. And when he went down in 1965 to Selma, he marched with Dr. King hand in hand, Torah in hand. When he came back from that march, he was asked by someone, "Rabbi, did you find time to pray?" He said, "I prayed with my feet." And I feel like that is something that we are tasked with doing every single day. Not because we are restless, not because we are people who want to make the world a better place, but because we are commanded to do it. It is in us. Everything we do, everything that we try to do on a daily basis is to make the world a better place, to pray with our feet. And Jewish or not, I know that we're all trying to do that here. And our next speaker has been doing that for more than a decade. Juan Rodriguez cut his teeth in LA City Hall before helping chart the course for Vice President Kamala Harris, when she was the Attorney General and when she was our United States Senator. Today, Juan is a partner at one of the premier political consulting firms in California and the nation, Bear Star Strategies, and the campaign manager for the Stop the Recall campaign. Juan's going to offer us some inside baseball on the recall and ways in which we can take action and ways in which we can fight back. And after all, that's what we're here to do today, to hear about JDCA and hear what the organization does and will do, but also take substantive action to fight and make our state and make the world a better place. Juan, we are honored to have you here. The floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you, Jeremy. Really grateful and excited to be here, and really excited to see what this chapter is going to do. Not too often you get to see the beginning of an organization instantly have national reach. And for the folks who don't know Haley, you guys have a great leader, seen her up close personal, do a lot of really great work with our vice president. So happy to be here. I'll make my comments relatively brief. I know you guys have heard from a lot of really talented friends that I've had a lot of experience working over the past couple of years with. But I was asked to speak a little bit about the recall. As you all know, we're in it. There are multiple candidates who are already talking about jumping into the race, mostly on the Republican side. This is the 6th recall attempt against this governor since he got into office. A variety of different factors contributed to allowing this recall to actually move forward. But I think there are a couple points that are important to highlight. The first, as awareness continues to grow in this recall, folks are beginning to know who these proponents are. You know, in an environment where we're dealing with an increase in hate crimes, the leader of this recall really kind of represents everything we have worked hand in hand for years to kind of fight back against. One of the lead proponents of the recall, principal reason for kind of pushing this forward, has talked about the need to microchip the undocumented because, according to his words, it's work for animal control. That type of language, you know, we've heard before in many ways. It is a threat to democracy, it's a threat to justice, and it's something that we are taking incredibly serious. Who's behind the recall? Beyond the proponents are the actors that we've seen have been longtime supporters of Trump, the National Republican Party, Mike Huckabee, Newt Gingrich, and many others that I can list that have been kind of front and center trying to identify candidates to really not only go after the governor, but everything that, you know, California values and policies that we've worked on for years are kind of front and center, because this is the first national test for Democrats. So the implications are farther than just what will happen in this election. Haley talked a little bit about the national map. You're beginning to see interest from the DSCC and the DCCC in terms of what will happen in this race, because the outcome of this election, which will happen later this year, and it'll come pretty quickly, will have significant impacts even of how the midterm elections come together over the next several months. So we're taking it very serious. It will come really quickly. The other thing I think is important to know is John Cox, who is one individual who's already jumped into the race, is already putting $5 million on TV. So the threat is real. We are building a really broad coalition. I'm excited to see a lot of friends on the Zoom. There are a lot of different things we can do to kind of get engaged. I know I saw Kathy Younger earlier, single-handedly has already signed up over 1,000 people in Women Against the Recall. So call Kathy Younger or join up by going to stoptherepublicanrecall.com. You can sign up, get information or email, or you can email me directly at juan@bearstarstrategies.com. I know many of you guys are already in the fight, so I won't belabor the point. I just wanted to congratulate you for all the work that you've done to date, and I'm honored to be a partner in the fight. Thank you.
Thank you, Juan. We really appreciate it. I'm so excited to be here with everyone tonight. My name is Jonathan Allen, and I'm JDCA's Chapters Director and Outreach Manager. I'm so excited for this chapter launch in particular in Southern California. I have the pleasure of working with our 16 state chapters across the country and engaging our grassroots base in meaningful opportunities to get involved both in advocacy and our electoral work. Our chapters really are a critical part of JDCA and work to support Democratic candidates, educate and mobilize Jewish voters, turn out the vote in key elections, and advocate for policies impacting our communities that are consistent with our values. As Haley mentioned, next month we'll be putting those values into action with our first ever virtual week of action on Capitol Hill. Our chapter members and supporters will be meeting virtually with their members of Congress and advocating for our policy priorities as Jewish Democrats. Our meetings will include issues such as the rise of anti-Semitism and domestic extremism, the attack on voting rights across the country, gun safety, immigration, and more. We'll host a launch event and advocacy training on June 3rd, followed by the meetings with the members of Congress on the week of June 14th. We'll send all of this information in a follow-up email along with the resources Juan mentioned, and hope to see everyone there. Again, I'm really excited for the launch of the chapter. I'm really excited to get to work with all of you. And with that, I'll pass it over to our last speaker of tonight, Nancy Solomon, one of our chapter leads.
Thank you so much. It's so great seeing so many people today. I'm going to briefly tell my JDCA story. As you can imagine, the last 4 years has been a little hard, particularly last year. And I was so despondent. I went to one of my mentors, and as the Talmud said, find a mentor. And I said, I need someone to guide me. I feel I don't have a vehicle to express my democratic values as a Jew in this country. And I just feel like I need something out there. And he said, call Ada Horwich. We're all embarrassing Ada tonight. They said, call Ada. And I sat down, I called Ada and I said, meet me for lunch. And she did. And I said, I need help. I need help. I need someone to help me express the angst I feel and the desire I have to show the country and the communities that we want to be allies with, my Black and my brown friends, that as a Jew, I care about civil rights. I care about immigrant rights. I care about voting rights. I care about public education. I care about wage inequality. How do I express this as a Jew? What's the vehicle? And Ada said, I got a great thing for you. And she brought us and all of us to the JDCA. And it's been so meaningful to me to have this community. And I hope that you all find it as valuable as we have. It's very emotional. It's been a very emotional week with what's happening in Israel. And I know we're all very upset about what's happened here in Southern California with the anti-Semitic acts. And I miss seeing you all in person, and I can't wait to be together. I can't wait to get in good trouble together and to fight the good fight together. So thank you so much for participating. And I can't wait to hug you and see you and be safe. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to turn this over to Jonathan.
You're done. We're great. Thank you
Okay.
all so much for joining us. Hope
you.
you have a nice evening.
Okay, well, I'll just say one thing at the very end. This was quite the remarkable event and coming together. We've had more speakers and elected officials in the past, I think 73 minutes than we've ever had before for JDCA, and we've had many, many events. Thank you so much to everyone for showing up today, for bringing such positive energy and vision for what this chapter will become. And thank you to our chapter leads for making this happen. Thanks to every speaker and elected official who is taking part, and thanks to everyone for being here. I've loved to see the messages in the chat. I've loved just the positive energy, and we know we're going to make a difference in advance of the next election with this chapter and this movement. So we will follow up with you all via email, and we'll take our voices to Capitol Hill next month. Thank you. Thank you.